Okay, there we go. So, I guess the first thing I'm going to do is to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. And I'd really like to pay my respects to elders past and present. And I'm just joyful to be here from the land which is known as Mukabula. And what Mukabula means is the meeting of two rivers. It's the Parramatta River and the Lane Cove River. So I'm just very grateful and fortunate to be here, because when I look out at actually the meeting of those two rivers, and I always just imagine the traditional owners of the land, and I think they were known as fishermen. I think that's what they did. And I just love the stories my grandkids are telling me about the way that they actually used to fish using berries, which sounds so much more ecological than what they do now, and all the mess that I found outside and have to watch when I walk my dogs every day, because they leave all these hooks and all sorts of things. So we have lessons to learn from the traditional owners. But I really, really welcome you, Bianca. I'm really grateful for you spending this time. Unfortunately, I've also got to do an official introduction of myself, and then I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, because you'll do a heaps better job than I will. I know that. So I'm Kathy Bettman, and Associate Professor Kathy Bettman, Deputy Dean at the Ken Miller Institute, but I'm here in my role as a member of the National Heads of Counselling and Psychotherapy Educators. And it's even more delightful for me to have you here, because we work together on the PACFA board, where I have to say your voice is always so refreshing, so onto it. So I'm just very grateful. And I've told you before, I'm actually nervous, but we'll see what comes out of that. So please, please, please introduce yourself. And thank you again for being here.
Rani Mata, thank you so much. It's an actual an honor to be here and yarn with you, because ultimately, what you're doing is you're raising awareness about lots of different perspectives. And I think that's important. So a little bit about me. I'm actually on Kaurna Country here in the Adelaide Hills, northwest or northeast Adelaide Hills. And I'm a Buddy Maya and Ukrainian woman. So Buddy Maya is First Nations person from mid of Western Australia. I was born on Kaurna Country, and I've lived all my life on Kaurna Country, apart from and Paramount Country, apart from 10 years when I lived on the far west coast of South Australia. But I feel really connected to this space and am honoured to be here working and just to be surrounded by all the the history, the ancestral connections here, and the elders. The community is really supportive. So, okay, so a bit about me. As you said, we're on the Psychotherapy and Counselling Federation of Australia's board. I'm also the co-convener of PACFA's College of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Healing Practices, a very long name. But what it is about talking about talking about privileging Indigenous healing practices and different First Nations approaches to healing and mental health and wellbeing and social and emotional wellbeing. So that's one part. As you can see from my name there, I also operate Warrada Holistic Wellness, and Warrada means wedge-tailed eagle, and in my Buddy Maya language, and it's basically looking at well-being from up above and seeing how everything interconnects to well-being, mental health and things like that. And so Warrada Holistic Wellness is an international Indigenous social enterprise, and it's about giving back to community and changing that kind of the thoughts about healing and what that might look like, and decolonising the space of healing and mental health. As part of that, I have Barani Press, which is a publishing arm to Warrada,
Wow.
and that's talking about privileging First Nations stories in whatever way they look like. And then I guess it's kind of like my spare time, but I'm also doing my PhD. I'm about to do my confirmation of candidature very soon, in May, early May, and I'm with Bachelor Institute of Indigenous Tertiary Education, and I'm absolutely honoured to be there because they privilege two-way learning, and they privilege Indigenous scholars and Indigenous healing practices, learning practices and knowledges. So that's who I am.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit more about your PhD? I mean, I don't know where to begin, so let me start.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us about
So,
that. What are you doing?
oh, I'm really excited about this. So what I'm looking at, I never wanted to do anything that was going to end up a dusty thesis on a shelf and no one ever reads. And so I spent a lot of time supporting organizations, corporates, universities, in fact, on integrating trauma and culturally informed uh, processes to healing, to operation, decolonizing. And I got to the point where I'm kind of a bit sick of talking about trauma at the moment. Um, and through my own professional experience, I know that it's healing in community, it's connection with others that people heal. So what I thought was, what there must be a different way of looking at this. And so there's a term, Ngardi Guwanda, which means thinking, feeling, listening strongly. It's a Buddy Meyer word. So what I'm looking to do is integrating Ngardi Guwanda into community-led women's empowerment projects for entrepreneurship. And it's going to be here on Kaurna Country. So we're only looking at basically local solutions driven by community, co-collaborations with elders, community, and then the people attending the workshop. So it's a practice-based research. And so the idea is that the community then holds this information, holds the workshop contents, because the community have actually created this in collaboration with myself.
So
And
is that like action research? Because I'm just trying to
yes,
get my head
yeah,
around like the
it is.
methodology. What are you actually going to be doing?
Yes, so I'm basically going to be running workshops. So creating a workshop module, a content. It depends on what the community wants that to look like, but creating in collaboration with community a workshop approach, like a 5-module empowerment program. So looking at what the barriers are for women, to First Nations women on Kaurna Country to move into entrepreneurship, and then move into some modules for entrepreneurship specifically. So the idea is that at the end of this, hopefully, community female members of the community can then move into sovereign businesses. And yeah, so
So what's your
it's
time frame though? Because you're going to provide them with these workshops
we're
and
going
then
to create them together. 2 years.
already you see the white eyes see in a total different way.
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay, you're going to co-create these workshops
Yes.
and then, because then you're not delivering them because then they've taken part in their
No,
creation.
we're going to do, because the co-creation, the co-collaboration occurs at 3 levels. It occurs with elders, with community members, and then the people that actually attend the workshops. It has like this Indigenous pedagogy, where we learn from each other. And so that's the 3 different levels. And then what I'll be doing is actually contracting in local First Nations facilitators to work with me to facilitate the programs. And then they'll be skilled at the end of it, skilled in the content, to then continue to run it if they want to. So that's kind of what it's looking like at the moment. But it all depends on what what community and elders, the direction and what they come up with and what they'd like to see it look like. Because ultimately, community has their own experiences and knowledges, and they know what they need, more than I'm not really an outsider. I'm a member of the community as well. But community knows what they need. And so that's what this was about. This is this co-collaboration. So the methodologies I'm looking at. So there's a meta framework at this stage of the 6 stages of decolonisation. So looking at, rediscovery, discovery, mourning, dreaming, healing, and then it moves through to action. So what do we do to give back to community? What action are we going to take, both in ourselves and then others? So that's Muller's work and Pokalanui's work of his 5 stages of decolonisation. So that's a meta framework. And then said some of the methodologies and what I'm looking at are yarning healing circles, because we heal in community. We heal through the sharing and the equal power balance. Not normally what happens when research occurs, there's this imbalance of power. It's normally the researcher being the expert, and then there's the participants being researched. I didn't want it like that. I wanted to do this. So that's why they're co-collaborators. I wanted to actually recognise that anyone being part of this has their own knowledge and skills, and they contribute as skilled people to this process. So yarning healing circles, looking at Indigenous pedagogy, that kind of thing. Looking at grounded theory of empowerment, and a few things like that.
There's just so much there, because obviously the value is for that community and for the women that are doing this.
Yeah.
Would that be malleable or possible for other people? It will.
Yes. Yeah. So the idea,
yeah,
the idea is that this is done on Kaurna Country, because I thought that would be the easiest place to start, because I'm more known here, and then I don't have to travel and things like that. And then the idea is then that information is not gifted back to community, because it's co-created with community. So they hold that knowledge. And then the idea is then hopefully there is some outcomes that, are great. I hope that's the way it works. I kind of think that's the way it's going to work. And then other communities may want the same process to be done, but it may look very different, because it depends on what that community wants. And so the idea is that this is to create a way of doing research in community. It is about recognising, as part of this process I've been undertaking this community ethics, because we as researchers, we know about Western ethics, but the first part is actually community ethics. So we need to look at the circular research. We need to look at, does community even want this to happen on their country? Do they support this going on? And there's all those conversations, all those yarns about what it is. At first I had some people saying, well, you're going to be one of those people, academics. And I said, well, no, this is kind of what I'm trying to achieve. Oh, well, that's different. We'll support that. And so the idea is that, one, it creates it's like 15 PhDs all in one, really, but I couldn't do it any other way. And so the idea is that, one, community can go, we want you to do a community ethics before you even go to Western ethics. So they've got something anyone who comes onto this country can then be told, no, you have to do this first. before they go to Western ethics.
Yeah.
And then the other one is that it gives community a local research that they can then hold up and go, if you want to come in and do this, it has to be community led. This is the way we want it to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, I'm surmising, I'm hypothetic, it's a hypothesis. With my professional experience, I think that's the way it's going to turn out. But at the moment, there's nothing that's been developed by community for community that's had PhD research linked to it.
Wow. I mean, that brings up so many questions. I mean, how you balance, I mean, the importance of the community stuff that you've described, there's no question. But how do you balance that with the Western academic way? Because are you going to have to write a thesis?
An exegesis, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. And then the dissemination of that, surely that will also look very different than, sure, you can do the research article, but it seems to me there needs to be something else as well.
Absolutely. So what happens is that whatever outcomes it is at the end of this, then that is actually, we bring that back to community, and I yarn with community about what I found. I say we because we're
sure.
co-collaborating.
Yeah.
And also the other thing, I'm just focusing on the women's side, but our community never wants to leave our men behind. So our community, so there's a men's concurrent program that's occurring as well, but it's not linked to research. And it may look very different to the women's program. So that's being done separately, but concurrently, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, so the results first off go back to community, and we discuss about what, we'll speak to elders. It'll be a continuing toing and froing between. So there's no surprises. There's no, me not understanding that maybe there's something, a subtlety that I may have missed, anything like that. So that's the way it is. And yes, there'll be journal articles, but the idea is that what occurs from this is a program that's developed that the community continue to run if they want to.
I mean, what's also interesting is that there is such a strong and valuable separation between the male and the female. Yes. So in Western ways, it would probably be seen in a negative light as, oh, what's going on here? But there's very much, in my words, valuing the strengths of the genders in different ways, upholding them in different ways. And that's to be continued, as against in Western culture, I think, where the work is trying to get it to be equal rather than individually important. I
guess the way we look at it is that women and men, and if you're depending on how you identify, people just slot into those areas. Yeah. We say men's and women's business. Yeah. Okay, that's how we talk. But some transgender may identify as women or whatever. Okay, that's not. We don't create that. We say men's and women's business. The thing is that men's and women's businesses is, and I'm not talking about secret knowledge, we are knowledgeable in our own right. There is not a patriarchy in traditional spaces. There is women's knowledge, there's men's knowledge, there's community knowledge, basically. And so, and of course, the barriers to women determining success for themselves and entrepreneurship and what their barriers are may be very different to men's. And it may not be in a Western way either. And so that's the kind of thing that needs to be thought about. Is it might be success for a grandmother may be that she can actually share a story while she's creating something that she shares with her family. That may be success. That's not a Western definition of success. And the idea is that it means that people don't have to leave their community, that they can create these entrepreneurial activities, whatever they look like, within their own community, and create it to look like whatever's right for them. And so that's kind of what this looks like. And I'm just so excited about it. I just, it's not going to be a dusty piece of work. It is living and breathing, and it is, stuff that the community can use every step of the way. They can continue to go back to it. They can go, this is what happened on Kaurna Country. And I said, it's privileging that community ethics first. Don't even bother going to Western ethics unless you've got community ethics.
But it's also what I'm seeing is, because this is your PhD, inverted commas, it's not just your individual PhD. It's very much a study for community.
Absolutely. And First Nations knowledges, it can't be mine. It was never going to be mine.
Okay.
And I think the more researchers recognise that if they're going to look at interacting with and looking at any Indigenous research, they need to recognise that the knowledge is actually a shared knowledge. It's not actually only the researchers.
I guess, and we've got an agreement that if I ever say something wrong, you will make it very clear.
Absolutely.
So I guess what I've always wondered about is, can a white man do Indigenous research?
I think that you need to make sure that you include First Nations collaborations.
And that's the word, because that's something you've told me even before. They're not participants. Everyone that takes part is a collaborator, is a co-constructionist of the outcome.
Absolutely.
And you've also made a very important point. You don't own the knowledge. You've said that.
No.
This is not your knowledge. This is beyond that.
Yeah, because it's that Indigenous pedagogical approach. I'm learning as much from them as they're learning from me. How could I then own the knowledge? I can't. It's actually a shared knowledge. And it's a knowledge that was created at that time. And it may be very different with another group of people. So I don't gift the stuff back to community, because it's our shit. How could I gift someone else's knowledge back to them? It doesn't work. So what I can do is I can write about the process and what I found. That's different. But the actual workshops are actually owned by community. And what I hope is that what comes out of this is a new way of doing things that then can be replicated into other communities if they want that.
Yeah. If they want that, because I think there would be a lot of white researchers who absolutely want that. But it's like, how do you get that? Because I'm also so conscious as a teacher that whenever students have said, we'd like to do research looking at Indigenous people, it's like, no, you can't. Yes, it's a lot of the time it's because of timing, and you have to, as you've already explained, ethics committees doesn't start with your HREC at your university.
No.
So there's always that time pressure which is something, and also it's like, well, you got to do it properly. You can't just do it. You have to tick the boxes for the right reasons. So it's not done. So on the one hand, there's like a sadness for me that students are not learning, I won't say anything about Indigenous people, even if it's a one-sided view of Indigenous people. I don't know how you improve that. Like,
I think it's about listening, learning to listen. And look, ultimately, there has been a lot of damage done in our communities from research being done from outside the community, as in from a Western framework. Things in our communities don't translate properly. And so you need that. I'm not saying don't do research. I'm saying think about why you want to do this research, what benefit it is to community, because there's so much harm being done. And look, connect to places like Bachelor. Listen to First Nations scholars about a different way of looking at things. Think about all those things. That's the stuff you need to have those conversations. But remember that there is enough work being done on this power imbalance, researcher and participants, expert and ill-informed. We don't want that anymore. It needs to be this way. The people that you're working with, that each of us are working with, are so knowledgeable. And this needs to be recognised. So what's the benefit to the community of having that research done? And there's many, many non-Aboriginal people that have beautiful connections with community, and that communities asked them to do stuff. But make those collaborations. I mean, most of the Western ethics now is asking, are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people being employed as part of this research? Are they connected? What does community say? All of those things. I mean, IATSIS has got, these big, these big rules, guidelines. I mean, they've got pages and pages of it. It depends on where you're going, but recognize that the community ethics part is for me the actual more important part. So what I'm finding now is that people are saying, yeah, we've done community ethics, come on, what's stopping you? And then I have to slow down, because now I've got to go through the process, and that stuff drives me insane. Because according to all the people I've been speaking to, yes, they're happy for this to happen. And so I had to create, in the Western term, infographics, so that I could explain what I'm trying to do. And it was when I created that infographic that people went, oh, now I get what you're talking about.
okay, it's just that sometimes I understand, don't get me wrong when I say that, it almost feels that Indigenous people are tired of being harassed, constantly being asked questions, like it's a digging in, and it's like, enough, leave us alone. So
that's because of that power imbalance, and because of the poor use of that research. So now the questions might be, for a researcher or a potential researcher, how can I support you in that community? How can I support you? What do you need that I could help you with? That might be more the question. And look, I'm not saying that I've got all the answers. Absolutely not. I'm just one person with a different way with looking at things. But that would be the questions to ask. You know, what do you need? Do you need anything?
So if I could wave a magic wand, what would it be in order to support research? I mean, I don't even know if I have a right to ask. I was going to say a magic wand to support research for Indigenous people. But then another voice says to me, let Indigenous people put up their own hands. Why are you thinking that you should be trying to? But then there's the other voice that says clearly there is less affluence and less, affluence is the wrong word. I mean, opportunity, maybe. I don't know. It seems that there is an imbalance. So you want to make that more equal, but then you feel I don't have the right to be even suggesting that it's not equal. Do you know what I mean? It's what does one need to do to move forward in a way that Indigenous people will go, this is good.
So
And
I would suggest that people, if they're serious about this, researchers, that they start looking at Indigenous methodologies. I mean, there is more than enough things out there, more than enough First Nations scholars that are writing about Indigenous methodologies. You know, looking at can you just do this justice? Can you suspend your Western framework to actually step into this space? Can you do that? And we all need allies. We need good research that's supporting community. How can community be involved in the process? That's the bit that we need to start being asked. And you've got great things like places like Bachelor, who are privileging First Nations scholars, voices, everything, methodologies in processes, in research. It's exciting.
oh, it is exciting.
I want to see
Scary.
more. You know, it was really scary. I think a lot of people see go PhD or master's research, and that, you know, that's really full on. But done in a way where First Nations voices are privileged, like that's
It seems to
so
me that
cool.
from what you're saying, that PhD or masters, that's not what counts really in terms of good research from
No,
an Indigenous community perspective.
not at all.
What does PhD mean ultimately to the community?
Yeah, absolutely. And so they're all the questions that need to be asked. Unfortunately, you know, in Western academics, unless you've got the letters after your name, you're less likely to have your work looked at. And that's the sad thing. And so it's about encouraging more First Nations people to step into that scholars field. But I tell you, I've struggled with it, because I know that so much damage has been done in our communities from research. And I went, do I really want to step into this? Do I really want to? I kind of, you know, I've struggled with, and then I just went, you know what, done right. This could be amazing.
I think from
Yeah.
my perspective, it's amazing because it's important from my perspective that bridges are built. So if you can build that bridge where you can stand on the Western side as well as on the other side, so that you can be heard on this side, but do something valuable on the other side, then that to me is a plus. It's a win-win,
And
because
that's
we
why I'm
need
here.
people to be able to be building those bridges, because otherwise, when you wear a lens, how you grow up and your experiences that you have is how you see the world. So
Of course.
it takes somebody to say Indigenous methodology for you to go, okay, that makes sense. Yes, of course. Who's going to be wanting to be doing it the same way as we'd be doing it in the Western side? But you
Yeah.
have to be reminded of that. I mean, that was when you weeks ago said to me that about co-collaborators. Suddenly went, whoa, I never gave that a thought. It didn't even enter my head. Because to me, I don't even see what the importance or the level of feeling that goes into that researcher participant
Power imbalance.
yeah, because that's just how it is. That's
But
just how we do it.
wouldn't it be amazing if all research started talking about co-collaborators, whether it's Indigenous research or not? Because everyone's knowledgeable.
Well, actually, research is about gathering other people's knowledge.
Absolutely. So whose knowledge is it then? Other people's. So they're not participants. They are collaborators. So maybe we could start thinking about that power imbalance and going, why are we doing this research? What are we trying to achieve by this? Who's going to benefit from this? And how do we navigate that the potential for power imbalance? And also recognise if it's Indigenous research or research with Indigenous people, recognise that there needs to be a community ethics approach, and that is the respectful way. The respectful way is to see whether community even wants it. Do elders even want this?
It's what can I say? It's a little bit mind-blowing, because on the one hand, I feel almost like as a researcher, it's like saying, I want an Indigenous person to take my hand and walk me through it. And I know that Indigenous people are saying, no, you go find out, you do your homework, and then come. And it's like, I don't even know what homework I should be doing. So there's this
Absolutely.
struggle,
There are some amazing First Nations scholars, both within Australia and internationally. Just as all researchers should do, just pick up some books and read. That's look at all the different things out there. There are just so many, and some incredible First Nations scholars. And so there's lots out there if you just start reading.
can you
We all need
mention
allies.
Can you mention some? So if any, students or other people watching this will go, oh,
Absolutely. I can do, we've got this one is like the seminal text, Tui Smith. Like
wow.
if people don't, decolonizing methodologies, if people don't know this book, my gosh, it's called Decolonizing Methodologies, Research and Indigenous Peoples. Now
Wow.
this is brilliant. And there's, I've just got a few. I've got
I
3
love that
bookcases in this
cover with
room.
the footstep.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
cover
And
was
so this one, Researcher's Ceremony.
wow.
Aha. Recognize this. So this is it. We're entering into a ceremonial approach. So, he's not from Australia, but he's a First Nations person overseas. And, Indigenous research methods. Brilliant.
Wow.
Sean Wilson. And then you've got Margaret Kovac.
Indigenous methodologies.
Yeah,
Okay.
see, just more and more characteristics, conversations, and contexts. So then you've got This one. This one's a really old text. It's very hard to get a copy of it. Paddy
Oh,
Mellon has got it. Karen Martin, please knock before you enter. This is ethics.
oh, wow.
It is an old text, but this is foundational. So there's that one. There's look, if you health, my primary supervisor, Lorraine Muller. So
Wow, that's your supervisor.
yes, I read the book and then I contacted her.
Wow, you reach high. You don't mess around.
Absolutely.
No mess.
Absolutely. And then we've got, working at the interface,
Wendy
health
Edmonds.
professionals for Indigenous health, working at the interface. So these are all amazing, amazing books that, and there's, keep going. These are just the ones that are on my desk. I said I've got 3 bookcases in this room, and there are many different ones that you could just continue looking at.
I'm
And
really getting the feeling it's a little bit like, get off your bums. Don't be
yes,
so lazy. Get out there and actually research it. Don't just say
what
it's
a
true.
novel idea.
But I'm very mindful of the time, and I'm just wondering, I've asked a lot of questions. Is there anything that you are going, she hasn't asked this, or I want to answer this?
No, what I would suggest, knowing the audience that you're developing this for, is think about the value that's being added. So if you're teaching or writing modules, university modules and subjects on Indigenous topics, include First Nations voices in that. Get someone to support you in writing content. I'm writing a couple of modules for master's degrees at universities, and help them. I'm not suggesting contact me, okay? I'm not.
Please don't
But
contact her.
well, no, you can, but I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying involve people in the discussion, in the knowledge sharing, in the creation, because what you might do that, First Nations Mob are going to add a real depth to the content that may otherwise not actually come across. And I always think about, we've got this responsibility to the students that are accessing this content. How are they going to be enriched afterwards? Are we going to help them think about different ways or assumptions that they may have? All of those things. There's so much need in our communities, not just our First Nations communities, but in our community at large. How does them learning this topic, how do they give back to community? How are local elders involved in the university's content? This is occurring on their land. So it's all of those things that to start thinking about. Think about why research is being done. And is it ethically? I'm not talking about Western ethics. Is it ethically being considered? What is the benefit to community by having this? All of those things. But definitely the students that access whatever's being taught, written, whatever, how are they better off afterwards? Because we have a huge need for allies in Australia. And if everyone's not being educated, everyone's not being encouraged to think, recognize privilege, recognize that they're actually, looking at things from a different framework. Think about what that might actually look like. Develop connections with community. Like that. That's cool. What do elders want you to know? What does community want you to know and teach the students? Lots of different things all at once.
You're gonna have me crying soon.
Cry away. I'm a mental health therapist. I can navigate that.
Dear, I just can't thank you enough, honestly. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really, really appreciate it, as I know the viewers will as well. So,
Well, you are more than welcome. And, I love to yarn and I love to share my knowledge. But as I said, this is my viewpoint. This is not, don't take my viewpoint as representative of First Nations people all over Australia, because it's like saying your viewpoint is
exactly.
non-Aboriginal people Australia-wide. Like it would be ludicrous to even say that. But I'm here trying to make a difference, and I'm here I'm continuing to push all the boundaries that have settled for before. So I guess that's why I'm here. And I love questions. I love yarning. I love questions, because while you're asking questions, you're learning. And that's the important part.
Well, you might get more emails from me.
Yeah.
I'm warning you.
Email away.
Thank you again. I'll stop the recording now, and just been fabulous. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Got to find that little button. Here we